for the moment.
Test.
And so then, so then he will be able to hear through his mic, and he'll be able to hear through his speakers.
Okay.
And if you need to adjust his volume,
Okay. Well, you'll be able to tell. So he knows and he'll ring in here? Or how do we answer it? I guess I'm like not even seeing a phone or anything.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I trust you. I'm not the tech person.
Thank you for doing this.
Sure. Be happy. Trim is no fun.
What?
These trims are no fun.
No, I know. I mean, the biggest stress is getting everyone.
Yeah, that, and how to notice them, and when we can have it, who has to have it.
I'll be really shocked if no one can see this.
I'm probably hot. Yeah, I'll have to keep it on. So.
Yeah, and Olivia has confirmed too. All right. Can you say just hello?
Hello.
Oh, hello, test.
It should be
Test here. I'm here.
Oh, hi, Mr. Bartlett.
How are we doing?
Good.
Okay, will you just tell him we haven't gotten started yet, so he can just be on hold?
We haven't gotten started yet, so if you'll just remain on hold, we'll be starting pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay?
So the only way he can hear
Want to
us
make sure
through
I.
this.
Yes.
What about if
What?
it's not so close? Like, will he hear all the broadcasts? Like if
So everybody should have a microphone on when they talk.
Okay. Okay.
So that
All right,
he
I'm
will
gonna
hear
mute.
anything
I'll
that
mute
comes
myself here.
through
Anyone's.
anyone's microphone.
I mean, it worked well with Mary. So.
Yeah. If you want to, I was going to say, if you want to turn off the microphone until we get started.
Why don't you tell him? You're
Yeah,
gonna tell Mr. Bartlett you're going to turn off the mic till we get started.
Mr. Bartlett, I'm going to turn off the mic until we get started.
Okay.
Mr. Bartlett, are you still there?
Melissa's driving. She's coming.
Mr. Bartlett? Maybe he got disconnected. Can you tell?
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, he's here.
He's here. Okay, perfect. You
I'm
can.
here.
You heard him?
You did.
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, I heard you. I had it muted because you guys said to mute it so I didn't get feedback. So I forgot about that.
Do you want to wait or do you want to start? We're waiting for Melissa. You want to go ahead? Okay. Let me see how far away. Becca, do you know how far away she is?
Yeah. Good evening. Welcome to the Juvenile Welfare Board's first of two public hearings for consideration and adoption of the FY25 millage rate and budget. This public hearing is being held in accordance with Chapter 200 of the Florida statutes. Before we proceed to the action items for the first trim hearing, the board will need to make a determination that Mr. Bartlett may participate telephonically. He is currently on a speakerphone, and he can hear us, and you can hear him. Bylaws, Article 3, Section 2, and applicable law permit a member to participate telephonically, provided that we have a quorum in person, which we do. As we know, Mr. Bartlett is a member of JWB by virtue of his official elected position as the state attorney. Mr. Bartlett is currently at the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association in Panama City, which he must attend because of his elected office, and as such is unable to be here for this evening's meeting. Thus, the board, in its reasonable discretion, can make a determination that Mr. Bartlett has extraordinary circumstances by virtue of his official duties as state attorney and should be allowed to participate and vote telephonically. Do I have a motion that the board reasonably believes that Mr. Bartlett has extraordinary circumstances by virtue of his position as state's attorney and may participate and register his vote by telephone at this hearing?
I motion to allow Mr. Bartlett to participate.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I will ask Robbie Stivers to proceed with the proposed FY25 tentative millage rate portion of his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Next slide there, Hunter. We'll get into the FY25 budget development timeline, and we're at the bottom for 9/12. Key events that have taken place before is the draft FY25 budget presented on 6/20, and on July 18th, the board adopted a proposed FY millage rate and FY25 budget. Next slide, please. Millage rate history. And just a little background, in FY23, the millage rate was reduced, and that was the first reduction in over a decade. In FY24, the millage rate was reduced again, which is the first time in 35 years it's been reduced for 2 consecutive years. FY25 proposed millage rate is 0.8250, is the same as FY24. In 2024, the average single homeowner with a taxable value of $234,455 will have an ad valorem tax of $193. Next slide, please. This slide is an ad valorem and fund balance history and forecast. The blue column in the center is what we're focused on and what this body will be considering today. That is at the millage rate of the 0.8250, the same as last year. In the solid blue color in the middle is the millage rate for, or the millage amount for the FY23 of $108,300,000. And then the column above there, the lighter blue, is the required reserves by board policy that JWB has to keep on hand. And then the top part of that bar, a lot more white in it, I guess is a way to describe that, is $18.3 million, and that is the fund balance that the board has discretion over in FY25. To the right of the blue column is the forecast, and you can see how the forecasted ad valorem tax moves, as well as the reserves, as well as the unassigned fund balance at the discretion of the board. And as we spend fund balance down and do work with LAPS, with our agencies, that discretionary unassigned fund balance for the board obviously is declining. Next slide, please. Ad valorem revenue adjusted for inflation. This is a real key slide. The base year is 2007. JWD had inflation-adjusted ad valorem revenues of about $58.1 million adjusted for inflation. If you look all the way over to the far right column, 18 years later, FY25, JWD is projecting that inflation-adjusted revenues, ad valorem revenues, will finally exceed the 2007 year benchmark rate, which I think is very interesting. So 18 years later, we're finally adjusting for inflation. Next slide, please. This is the FY tentative millage rate, and the property valuation for this year in Pinellas County was $135 billion, and that's a 9.39 increase over the prior year. The proposed tentative millage rate of the 0.8250 requires 2/3 votes in the final hearing. This millage rate is equal to what the board approved for last year. It's the same millage rate. It's 7.96 greater than the rollback rate of 0.7842. Millage rate of 0.8250 yields an ad valorem revenue of $108,300,000. That's a $9.2 million increase, which we're going to talk about. Next slide, please. The primary uses of the increase are as follows, and this is the $9.2 million. $700,000 of that will be for programmatic increases that the board approved during the FY24 year and after the original budget was adopted. 1.7 of the $9.2 million in increase is towards meeting the board's required fund balance, which we just talked about. 6.8 is the remaining balance of that, and it's divided as follows, or distributed as follows. 1.8 million in cost of living increases for current programs that's funded by JWB. $2.4 million FY funding opportunities preliminarily approved by the board in FY24. $1.4 million in additional strategic increases, and it goes to the following programs: Early Childhood Public Awareness Campaign, Community Alliance and Preventable Child Deaths, Public Awareness, Sleep Baby Safely, and then other strategic initiatives. Next slide, please. $2.6 million increase was for the request for applications, and the total amount of the request of applications that we're proposing in this year's budget is $5.1 million. The remainder part of that will come out of fund balance, and then the balance is $415,000 in new extended programs to complete the implementation of JWB's strategic plan. This concludes my tentative millage rate presentation. Are there questions? Hearing none, Ms. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
This is the public comment and question portion of the hearing on the tentative millage rate for fiscal year 2025. Do we have any public comments at this time? Do any members of the board have any comments and/or questions at this time? The board must now consider the resolution set forth. The board must now consider the resolution to set forth the tentative millage rate. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY25 tentative millage rate.
Resolution 25.01, tentative reading. A resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative levying of ad valorem taxes for Pinellas County for fiscal year 2025, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 12th, 2024, adopted fiscal year tentative millage rate following a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065, and whereas the gross taxable value for operating purposes not exempt from taxation within Pinellas County has been certified by the county property appraiser to the Juvenile Welfare Board as $135,391,472. Now be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County that the fiscal year 25 operating millage rate is .8250 mils, which is greater than the rollback rate of .7642 mils by 7.96%. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Do I have a motion to adopt the FY '25 tentative millage resolution? Do I have a second?
Second.
I will now call for Olivia to call on each board member for their vote.
The Honorable Patrice Moore, Board Chair.
Yes.
Division Chief Jim Milliken, Vice Chair.
Yes.
The Honorable Bruce Bartlett, Board Secretary.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Onks Jr.,
Yes.
Ms. Kristen Nage,
Yes.
Mr. Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
the Honorable Chris Latvala,
Yes.
Mr. Michael McCurrick,
Yes.
Miss Melissa Rutland,
I'll ask Robbie Cyrus to proceed with the proposed FY '25 tentative budget forecast.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first slide we're going to see are changes since the July 18th board meeting to the FY '25 budget. And revenues have decreased roughly $2.772 million. And the result, the large portion of that is $2.640 million of that is due to declining fund balance, and that's for, the board has directed JWB to reduce lapse among agencies, and we're seeing a lot of progress in that regard, and our agencies are doing a really good job with that. The other difference is in interest expense, $132,000, and that is a result of the lapse being decreased, the fund balance being decreased, and therefore our interest income is a little bit less. Expenditures, increases of $142,000, $25,000 of that is for behavioral health, and that's with the Children's Mental Health Institute. Due to the Kids Mental Health Foundation annual fee is $25,000 of that. $117,000 is the balance. $168,400 for contractual services. That's for our foresight consultant, for our upcoming strategic plan, and an increase of $48,750 for salaries and benefits in the event that the upcoming competitive market survey merits that some salaries are adjusted. Next slide, please. FY tentative budget revenue. And if you'll focus on the variance side of that, ad valorem revenues on a millage rate of 0.0825 is $108,346,000. The variance of that this year this proposed budget compared to the amended budget last year is $9,221,000. The ad valorem revenue is quoted there at 97%, and we do that consistent with statute, where there may be variances in the collectability of that revenue, so we don't want to over budget in that regard. Interest Income, we're budgeting at about $2,579,000, and contributions are expected at $40,000, which gives a tentative revenue budget of $110,996,000. That's a variance of an increase of $9,264,000. Next slide, please. FY tentative budget program expenditures. Program continuation, this is the cost of living adjustments. The variance of that compared to this proposed budget compared to the amended budget last year is an increase of $5.6 million, $5,446,000. New and expanded programs, there's a variance there of $197,000, increase over last year. Request for applications, RFA, and capital technology. Last year we spent $2.9 million. This year we're proposing to spend $5,476,000 for a variance of $2,576,000. And the final item there is contingency, which we wiped out this year and not want to budget next year or this coming year in FY25. We reduced that by $500,000. So the total variance from last year compared to this proposed budget is $7,920,000 for total expenditures of $118,145,000. Next slide, please. This is the FY Children and Family Services budget that we have. And as you can see, the top three spend there are out of school time, behavioral health, preparing educational and family support. Total budget for that is $117,730,000. Next slide, please. FY25 tentative budget administrative expenditures. FTEs are increasing by 5.5 positions, and it's really 6 positions, but we've taken a half-time position off. 3 of those positions are in our agencies and support our agencies and the programs. The other 3 help go to finance analysis, program evaluation, and program administration. Salaries and benefits, compared to last year, we have an increased variance of about $489,000. We budget our salaries and benefit line item at 97.5% because we know we'll have vacancies throughout the year, and that's a more accurate way to reflect that. Operating cost, the variance is about $27,717 compared to last year. So the total variance from this year's proposed budget versus last year's amending budget is $516,981. Next slide, please. Changes in fund balance. The beginning fund balance compared to last year in this proposed budget is $4,732,000. The ending fund balance proposed in this year's budget is a decrease of $2,265,000. If you'll note at the bottom there on the FY25 in the middle column, the proposed budget fund balance, we're forecasting it to be reduced by $22,239,000. This concludes my FY presentation, budget presentation, and I ask for questions at this time.
This is the portion where we will go into public comment if we have any.
Nope.
Any questions or comments from the board at this time? The board must now consider the resolution to set the tentative budget. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY25 tentative budget.
Resolution fiscal year 25-02, tentative hearing. A resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2025, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida on September 12, 2024, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065 And whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County set forth the appropriations and revenue estimate for the budget for fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $162,556,324. Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County that the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget be adopted, and this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Do I have a motion to adopt the FY '25 tentative budget?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I will now ask Olivia to call on each board member for their vote.
The Honorable Patrice Moore, Board Chair.
Yes.
Division Chief Jim Milliken, Vice Chair.
Yes.
The Honorable Bruce Bartlett, Board Secretary.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Oggs Jr.,
Yes.
Ms. Kristen Nage,
Yes.
Mr. Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
the Honorable Chris Latvala,
Yes.
Mr. Michael McCurrick,
Yes.
Miss Melissa Rutland.
With that, unless the board members have any further comments, this concludes the first public hearing for the FY '25 millage and budget. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Yes. Sit back down.
I was just gonna make a comment that I would like to see us try to reduce the tax that we're collecting next year rather than increase the tax. I know we kept the tax rate, millage rate the same, but due to the large increase in property taxes, obviously the amount of tax we're collecting has increased. So if we can try for next year to, as property values continue to skyrocket, kind of match that. I would greatly appreciate that.
And I think one of the things next spring we can be talking about is, given current programming, what increases in costs they have, and try to attempt to look not just at stated inflation rates, which is what we usually do, and that is one point of reference and a good one to look at on a regional basis, but also to look at our agencies who are providing services to children, and are they experiencing greater than or lesser than those inflationary factors. My gut and my sense, but I won't tell you I've done that analysis, say that because a lot of their employees are either hard to find employees, or they're lower paid employees who have needed more raises to be able to function. And their sectors have in fact gotten greater raises, and things like insurance that affect everybody who has a facility. Those are the kinds of things that they see. But we get their full budgets, so we can look at that with that exact eye in mind. And then the board will want to weigh in on the new strategic plan and how aggressive it does or doesn't want to be in adding programs, scaling up programs that we know really work well, as opposed to just creating new things, or whether there are programs that we believe are not worth it, or are not delivering the results that we all want to see for kids. So I think all those things should be up for discussion every year, one way or the other. But probably in the winter, spring timeframe, when we have time to then roll them into specific budgets for the summer.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Meeting adjourned.
So is this part of the public record, or we just put it in the notes?
Yeah, you can, just put Melissa Rutland made a comment regarding millage rate in the upcoming fiscal year.
So the vote itself,
Oh, yeah, that goes in those minutes, yes, absolutely, yes.
but not my chicken scratch. I don't have to laser fish it.